Hi, my name is Lana Fine, the host of the Loop Scoop video podcast. I'm here today at Same Sky Collective Society's studio. We have John Smallman's art in the background of this shot, and I am lucky enough to have my guest here today, Olympia Marra, who is a creative, brilliant young woman who is an artist, a person with lived experience, and a Kamloops local. So please welcome Olympia to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come and sit down with me. So you and I met when you came into the studio and you agreed to be a participant in my research project through Thompson Rivers.
Yeah.
What was that like for you, participating in the research project? Because we were looking for creative ways to address the overdose crisis, and you as an artist wanted to be a part of the cultural story mapping.
Yeah, I thought that was a really awesome way to kind of dig into what is working right now and the systems that are put into place to support people in addiction and support people in their recovery and stuff. And I think that expressing that through art, I don't know, it was really interesting for me because I was putting these symbols into the art, trying to symbolize these ideas that I have, and as I was creating the art piece, I just kept seeing more and more within it that I was like, oh, also this, and that could represent this, and I don't know, it felt like it helped me kind of dig deeper to what is helpful and what is working and what is not working as well. So
that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's kind of what my hope was with this project, is because we're in the same place, with the toxic drug crisis, and we haven't solved it. And so having this ability to tap into different streams of consciousness and thinking, and to be able to use art, I found, like, even for myself, that we're able to come, to find meaning in things, to convey it without having, if you don't have the words to describe it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you liked it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, sorry, recut, let's go back if you hated it. So let's start with tell us about yourself and the audience at home. What was it like growing up in Kamloops?
I enjoy living in Kamloops. I've lived here my entire life, and I have lots of family here. I was in French immersion school downtown until about grade 8 and bounced around a little bit with high schools. I ended up graduating from Westside. I had a generally positive experience with Kamloops. I've made a lot of good connections here and like long-lasting friendships and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. And tell me about your schooling experience, because you're also a student.
Yeah, I'm a student at TRU. I just graduated from the Education Assistance and Community Support Program in April, and I'm doing one more year of prerequisites before I go into the Bachelor of Education. Before that, I was doing the Human Service Diploma program. I was kind of leaning more towards social work and switched that up a bit and going more towards education now, but I'm kind of planning on leaning back more into the social work aspect of things. After my bachelor, I want to go into my master's for counseling. So yeah.
That's brilliant. You'd be so good at that.
Thank you.
I just realized how many more things you and I have in common, because I did the first 2 years, kind of the prereqs for Bachelor of Social Work, and then I went to UVic to get my bachelor's there, and then kind of wanted to come back into another world, and so now I'm here in Kamloops at TRU doing Master's of Arts, Human Rights and Social Justice.
Yeah.
And you'd like to go to UVic.
Yeah, so after I'm finished my Bachelor of Education at TRU, I would like to go to Victoria and work as an elementary school teacher there while I complete my Master's in Counseling at UVic. So that's my plan for now.
That's so neat.
Yeah,
and I did a little bit of time doing outreach not a little, but 8 years, doing outreach and education on the island, and having taught the substance use education and overdose response for the nurses and for the mental health and addiction students there. I loved it, like in just that little snapshot of teaching in a college, which you don't need a doctorate for, was brilliant. And I think that you could take over the whole class when you're finished. You have something really special to share about your personal experience and insight. So your family, I was had the pleasure of meeting your mom and your dad and your brother at his art show here in Kamloops. He's an artist, you're an artist.
Yeah.
What inspired both of you to be artists? Or have you always been? Was you born into it?
Honestly, yeah. We were born into a very artistic family. Like, my mom and dad both are very artistic people. My brother, Jasper, that you went and saw his art show, my other brother as well is an amazing artist. We all kind of were brought up in a very kind of creative environment, so that was always encouraged. And I think that both of us kind of had that passion from a very young age and that interest, so yeah.
That's fabulous. What's your favorite medium?
I bounce around a lot. I work a lot with acrylics. I work with spray paint. I crochet. I work with polymer clay. I make patches and stuff out of fabric. I'll paint on that. Yeah, I kind of hyper focus on one thing and switch it up. I have like a million projects on the go at all times, so yeah.
That's great. So I know that you do textiles, so I've seen these, tell the audience at home about your little outfits that you've made.
Yeah, I made like a little miniature doll version of myself. I have these pants that are just completely covered in patches. I made tiny versions of each of the patches and kind of put those on the pants. They're like the size of like my pinky nail each. They're very small. I got the smallest paintbrush I could find at Michael's, and it's my new favorite thing. So
I love my teeny paintbrush. It's like, why have I tried with these giant ones to come to the same result and just smear everything?
Yeah,
It's so adorable.
Yeah, my dad always comes in and is like, "You just love torturing yourself." It's like, no, I love tedious things. Like,
That's how you can make those small images. Otherwise, you wouldn't quite have the effect.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Hopefully, you'll be able to provide a photo of that for everyone at home. Because when you were telling me about that and showing me, I was just like, oh my goodness, you're so neat. So your brother, his show, he's an artist as well. And I found his art really interesting. Can you kind of describe for the audience at home what his art looks like compared to yours?
Yeah, he is a very creative person. He has like a very kind of, not quite abstract, but very like loose flow with his art, I'd say. Like, I feel like I'm a lot more of a perfectionist with my art than he is. Like, when I watch him do art, a lot of the time I'll be like, oh, don't cover that. Like, I'll get all like, oh my God, what are you doing? And then it turns out amazing. And he just has this like he does his art so casually. Like, watching him do art is amazing. And it kind of helps you understand the process behind how he gets to these really amazing creative pieces that, they're just awesome. And there's just this crazy juxtaposition of all these things, and he pulls inspiration from so many different places. And yeah, I've definitely learned a lot from the way that he does art, and I try and kind of pull that into my own. I feel like I'm a little more structured with the way I do art, and I try and like veer away from that sometimes, because it doesn't always, it's not always the best thing with art.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
And I know that you and I have a similar style of, ADHD tendency of having multiple projects on the go at a time. And so I completely understand when you try and go about it this pragmatic way of like, I don't want to waste one drop of paint, and as you told me once about waiting for the paint to dry.
Yeah, yeah.
Switching in between.
Yeah, having like 3-4 canvases on the go, so I can do that there, and then waiting for it to dry, I have to be doing something else, so I'll go to the next one and rotate between them all. And
that's really interesting that the difference between your and your brother's styles.
Yeah.
So your family seems amazing. Is that your main support network?
Yeah, definitely, and they have been for like my entire life. They've just been consistently amazing, and I feel really lucky because I feel like a lot of the people I know have childhood trauma that kind of roots back to their family, and my childhood trauma is definitely there, but it was not from my family, and I feel really grateful that I have had that support throughout my life, where it's just been consistently loving and supportive and solid. So yeah,
that's really important. Yeah, thank you for bringing that part up. And I feel the same way, because I was raised in a really incredible family. And that's kind of is the building blocks for things, and we're very fortunate because not everybody can still. We're so rare to have parents that are still together, even, I feel.
Yeah, totally.
Or, or just even your parents even have a good relationship. It's a very different dynamic from the times past. What was it like growing up here in Kamloops with your family and your school? And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I had a generally positive experience growing up in Kamloops. I definitely had my struggles in school, elementary and high school, just with kind of the social aspect of things. But yeah, I was really close with both my parents my whole life. I have a couple friends that I've had like kind of long-lasting relationships with. My one friend, we've been best friends since we were like 4 years old, and we still are, and that's been really great. My dad was a huge part of my life in the way that I was very involved with sports and stuff when I was in school, so he was often my coach, and he would go to tournaments and stuff with me. My mom showed up to all my games and matches, and
sweet.
So yeah.
I'm so glad that you had that experience.
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable sharing with our audience and myself, when we talk about person with lived experience, so you're somebody who's been through the struggles, are you comfortable talking about that a little bit more for those at home?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I have struggled, or I've have lived experience with addiction. That started at quite a young age for me. I think my struggles with alcohol started before I really realized that. I think it's kind of more of a hindsight thing for me, looking back and being like, oh, that actually started when I was like 13, and that was a problem for me then. But the issues that really kind of impacted my life in a really severe way started around 16 probably. So yeah, I was still in high school. And
how old are you now?
I'm 23.
You're 23.
Yeah.
So you've had some, you put some time in.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like that's probably why you'll be a brilliant counselor and social worker, whatever you choose to do, because you have that experience. And once you understand that from that perspective, you're going to be able to provide such a different, more in-depth and compassionate kind of care than somebody that may not have that experience. So I think you placed yourself very well in what you're doing. And when we did the interview with the research project, I was blown away by your ability to just bring meaning and truth and explore these really important topics in ways that were so tangible, and you're just amazing. So if we want to switch gears and talk about these issues that brought us together for the research, what do you see as being part of the reason why we ended up in the current situation that we did with the toxic drug crisis?
I honestly think that one of the biggest reasons that it got to this point is almost just a lack of humanity towards the people that are struggling with this stuff. So I think that there's a huge amount of stigma around addiction, around homelessness. I think there's a lack of empathy and compassion towards people that are going through this. I think a lot of the times people don't even really treat them like humans.
Yeah.
And I think that has really kind of made this
kind of compounded this situation.
Yeah.
It's give people a chance to kind of like ignore what was happening in front of them by like using labeling theory and by just othering people. And when you other them, then you don't have to care as much, and it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect you and your family.
Yeah.
Which is not a good way to be a human. In my humble opinion.
No, and it isn't even true, because it does affect everyone, and the rates of addiction and stuff are getting higher and higher, and they're getting younger and younger and younger, and you see crazy high rates of addiction in schools, reaching elementary schools and stuff now too, and it's an absolute crisis. And I think people, now that it is a crisis, people are being forced to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But I think if they would have acknowledged it before it was this bad, that we could have put in preventative measures and kind of stopped it from, like you said, compounding to being as bad as it is now. So.
Yeah, and the point too about people acknowledging it, that that doesn't mean that it's kind of like accepting and like versus like embracing and doing it well, right? Just because there's this kind of acknowledgement now that it exists. I think this part about anti-stigma should have been in place a long time ago, but is particularly important now when if we want any hope, to get out of where we are. People need to really have compassion towards other, and stigmatization of people who use substances is not helping.
Yeah.
And we, like you and I both know very well that the context of drugs, people have used drugs for as long as we know back going in history. It's just the legality around substances that has changed. And when we have that kind of criminalized issue underlying this, it contributes. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I also think that around like the criminalization of not only drugs, but I feel that people that are struggling with that, there's like this weird fear around them in society, which I don't think is necessarily, I think it's kind of wrongfully placed in a lot of senses. Not saying that there aren't people that do bad things in addiction, but I think a lot of people automatically have this idea that they are bad people, and they have this fear around them. And even in Vancouver right now, there's this all over the media. It's theft rates are super high right now, and for things like tents and propane fireplaces and these things that people that are living on the streets.
It's their survival.
It's literally their tools to survive.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they're going up and down on a daily basis. They're going around the city with garbage trucks. They're taking out entire tent cities and all of these people's shelters. They're putting it all in the trash can and driving away. And they're doing this on a daily basis. And then they're complaining about theft rates going up. So
if we, rather than taking it away, it's like there should be services and provisions in place to provide these necessary measures, because housing is not being provided for people. Yeah, it kind of seems silly when you look at it the way you explained it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's just that criminalization where it's like, okay, but if you were in that situation where you just had everything you had taken from you and you have no means to replace that, you need those things to survive. Like you said, those are all survival tools for them. And so if that is being constantly taken from you, you're going to do what you need to do to get what you need to do you're going to do what you need to do to get what you need to survive, right?
Completely.
So,
and like having housing is a human right. And we don't have enough housing, we don't even have enough shelter beds, and we don't even open up the emergency weather shelters until it hits 0 degrees. And that's even if it's 1 degree difference, which is just how do we expect the situation to unfold if this is what the current situation is, and then people are their belongings are being taken, whatever housing that they have created themselves on the street and put together. Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it is. It's very sad.
What do you see then as being some potential solutions or things that we could fix?
Well, I think about preventative measures immediately. I think that if you look at addiction and what drives people to addiction, it's like, for me, I always think of like a Buddhist teaching, and like my interpretation is it's kind of like a human condition to either be seeking pleasure or avoiding pain.
Yeah.
So you're either kind of seeking that rush or you're wanting that escapism. And I think when it comes to trauma especially, addiction's a really good out, right? And it's not, it actually perpetuates that trauma, it perpetuates that pain, but it does provide that relief, right? So I think that there could be a lot more support before people actually reach that stage where they are in addiction and they're struggling with that. If you actually just kind of go back to, even in schools, like school-aged kids and stuff, if there's more support and awareness around coping mechanisms and
and how the effects of pain and trauma, right, which are, as we've talked a few times on the show, Dr. Gabriel Mate speaks about how those are the underlying reasons why people would use substances. So if we have this kind of which it's great now that it's been acknowledged more about the impacts of trauma, but you have a brilliant point. If we started in schools and with coping mechanisms, because I know that's something growing up that I, no matter what, I was you know, that my parents tried and stuff, I had terrible coping mechanisms and would just let anxiety just, you know, overrun me. Like,
Totally.
Yeah, you'd be amazed that I'm even doing a video podcast and you saw how anxious of a kid I was. Like, I just put myself through these things like singing competitions and then have a meltdown, like my poor mom every time before. So that's a really important part. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So as far as like service provision, how do you feel about peer workers' involvement in services?
I think it's amazing. I think that like getting support from people with lived experience, for me, like from my experience of getting support with recovery and stuff like that, there is a significant difference between someone who has learned from a textbook about what is helpful and what is not in recovery and what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing versus someone who has lived it and understands like the differences in everyone and whatever, like every person needs something different, right? So
yeah, completely. Things like tailored to the individual rather than this cookie cutter kind of cut shape of what recovery and treatment looks like.
Yeah,
I completely agree with that.
And I also feel like from my experience at least, I have felt a lot more stigma from people that you know, that have not had that lived experience, and not all the time. Like it's not all the time. There are really amazing supports that don't necessarily have that lived experience.
But having it is going to give you a different insight and understanding what it feels like to be judged and experience stigma.
Or even having a loved one having gone through it, right?
Yeah.
Observing someone you love go through that and being by their side and trying to be a support or being a support for that person, that is very impactful as well, right? So
totally.
Yeah.
And you're hard pressed to find anybody these days that hasn't experienced or know somebody that has been affected by the toxic drug crisis.
Yeah.
And I think it's particularly important too when you go through schooling that having that piece of having the loved one go through it. So like the dual part of it, if you're going to be in these higher up positions where you know how to appropriately then work with people that have the experience.
Yeah.
Because we know, you and I both know, there's a lot of ways of approaching the service provision that is just totally not helpful.
Yeah.
It could be more harmful than actually help people.
Yeah, and I also think that like when you have lived in the world of addiction for like a period of time, you kind of have a sense that the world is like against you almost, and I think that you experience a lot of judgment and you've experienced a lot of stigma and discrimination and all of these different things. So even just knowing that someone has gone through that, I feel like a lot of people, myself included, it immediately helps to break down those walls of not having your guard up and feeling like I'm gonna get judged and I'm gonna be put down for my experiences and what I've done and where I'm at,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's not like kind of the me versus you. It's kind of like, okay, we're this kind of connection to people, which is what's come up a lot in this podcast interviews, is this connection to other people. And when you have something that you can relate to the other person, it's a lot easier to talk to people sometimes.
Totally.
So it's probably why you and I have no problem at all, just chatting for hours.
Yeah.
And so you're 24 years old. You're absolutely wise beyond your years. And I think that all these things that you mentioned and the kind of interweaving of your creativity within this approach to solutions, I think that there's something to be said for you and for all of that. Is there anybody who particularly inspires you?
A lot of people inspire me actually from a lot of different angles. Like, I think that I have been really inspired by both of my parents for very different reasons. I think that my mom has really inspired this kind of compassionate, empathetic side of me where, I don't know, this kind of more like nurturing side almost.
Yeah.
My dad has really inspired me with like work ethic and stuff like that. He has put in a lot of work to, he had an upbringing very different from my own, and he's put in a lot of work in his adult years to kind of get to a place with like things like communication and stuff that he wants to be at, and I admire that so much. I was really lucky to be brought up by them, and I feel like I have like an advantage almost in that way compared to what he had coming into like adulthood, in the sense of my ability to kind of be in touch with like my emotions and my communication and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not the same the way that our parents' generation kind of engaged with communication around these stuff, and the old dogs, whatever, can't learn, whatever that old stupid saying. I've had the same experience with my parents. We're really seeing them make efforts into like paying attention to language and things like that. It really means a lot.
It totally means a lot, and it is just super inspiring to me. It totally is inspiring.
Yeah, it's never too late to learn new things and to change perspective. Like if we stop learning and and changing and grow, you stop growing. And I think it's a linear process in life to continue just trying to better and improve, and just as somebody who's very ADHD myself, and I overthink things a lot about like, could I have had that interaction in a different way? Could I have said things in a softer way? And I think that kind of critical reflection and self-analysis is not something that was of the norm in previous eras. And so when you see people make the effort for you to be like, okay, wait, I probably should say this more like this, and it really does give me hope that that it's possible to change stigma.
Yeah. I also have gotten a lot of inspiration through just going through my recovery, and the people that have helped me with that and kind of supported me through that, like the professionals that have done that for me. So like my therapist, for example, she is amazing, and she's gone through lots of hardship in her life, and she is just a really amazing person who has, I've been seeing her since I was I think 15 years old or something that, maybe 16. We've been seeing
That's a lot longer of a relationship with a counselor than most people have the opportunity to. That's really good. Because it's unfortunate when even through employers, and you get 5 sessions with somebody, and it takes a lot to build trust with somebody providing that kind of care for you, that intimate space, to then have it diminish, or if you don't click with somebody. So that is so cool that you have found somebody.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And I think that we're kind of starting to get to the point now where we're able to kind of do the real work. She's a trauma therapist, so we haven't really been able to do a lot of that trauma work, because I've been in such a terrible and vulnerable state for so long.
You're
really
just trying to get through, right?
And absolutely, I was doing my best, but it wasn't a good time for us to dig down and bring stuff up and try and work through all of these underlying heavy issues. It was kind of more harm reduction and managing what's happening right now to get me through to the next week, the next day, right? So
she sounds incredible.
She is really incredible.
That's very different dynamics and different kind of principles that seems like she's been able to help you with. Very that's let me say that one more time. That's okay. That's so incredible that she's, not only focusing on trauma-informed, that she has the ability to work through these different kinds of care provision. That's pretty unusual. Usually it's one way or the highway, and so for them to be able to support you wherever you're currently at, that's a huge important part of recovery.
It is, and having you said that, meeting people where they're at, that's something that I included in that social mapping project that I did for you. And it's meeting people where they're at, providing tools that are relevant to them and relevant to what they're needing in this moment, what they're willing to do in that moment, right? So I think that, I kind of touched on this before, it's not just this cookie cutter solution, right? So, some people maybe treatment, some people maybe just harm reduction, some people supporting them to just do whatever it is. So
so you're saying it's really important to have all these different options for people, and it's not what I want for somebody, it's what somebody wants for themselves.
And helping them find that, right, and supporting them through that. So
truly, we don't have just one size fits all. There needs to be a lot of different variety of options, because we know that certain programs don't work for certain people, and having, when we talk about cutting services, which is currently a big debate within the media, to me it just breaks my heart, because we don't need less, we need more.
And we need more accessibility to those services too. I think
you shouldn't have to take a bus out of town to be able to access your doctor, or or even go to any kind of group meetings, or none of it. You should be convenient within your ability to go to.
Absolutely. And I think financially too, there should be a lot more, I think within the government's kind of side of things, they need to be doing more to make these resources accessible financially to people, right? So to see a therapist. It's not a cheap thing to do.
No.
But it's like, if that's something that you're wanting to do, you should be able to access that, right? So
totally. Yeah, you reminded me of when I was working as a social worker, and they changed that, so a person with disability paperwork, that substance use became one of the criteria that they passed as like something that was affecting somebody's ability to maintain functions of daily living. And for me, it was great, because I had so many clients that I was working with that weren't having it acknowledged that it was that their struggles were beyond their ability to participate, as people like to refer to, in the workforce and be contributing members of society. And that's not something that's feasible for people when they're really in their struggles and they're just trying to survive at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And so there are resources and things that are available to, like you said, people with addictions, where they can access free support like counseling and addiction therapy and stuff like that.
Not enough, though.
But that's the thing, that's like another thing that's like touching on accessibility is like these wait lists and just like you said, there's just not enough. And I think that definitely kind of feeds into the lack of accessibility. There's all angles of things that are not accessible enough to people, right? So yeah.
Great point. What motivates you to speak so openly with myself and with our audience at home?
I just think that it's really important to bring awareness to people, and I think that the more people are informed and educated about this topic and can see
humanized.
Yeah, really though, like I think that the more people talk about it, the more people learn about it. I think that like parents and kids and just people in general, like I think it should be something that is more talked about in society, and I don't think it should be something that is like something to be ashamed of, you know?
Yeah, taking the taboo kind of out of the topic. So yeah, because I know like it wasn't comfortable always to talk about these things at dinner tables and even or anywhere, right? And that's where a lot of this stigma leads to people using alone, and you can't revive yourself with naloxone. You need somebody else to do so. So unless people feel that comfortability to share with somebody what's going on for them, then there's not much hope that people can make it through on their own. So yeah, that's a really important part to mention. And you're doing the work by coming here and making yourself vulnerable and sharing your experience. I think it's so valid. And because like, look at you, you're incredible. So like people see you, it's like, let's change the way that we think about what a person struggling with addiction looks like. Yeah, and change the way, just our views on people experiencing many barriers and marginalization within society.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's not just one type of person that ends up in that position, right? It can happen to anyone from any walk of life, and yeah, I think it's really important for people to like acknowledge that and like you said, just kind of humanize the whole experience, right?
Yeah. I'm curious what do you like to read? Like, who do you recommend to our audience as being informative, informative resources? Like not fantasy books, because that won't really help the situation.
Honestly, I've been reading fantasy books lately.
So related to this topic, is there any? Who would you recommend people read that would help provide insight, or that gave you a little bit, meaning in this whole thing?
Well, I haven't read a lot of recovery books recently, honestly.
It doesn't have to be recovery books either.
Yeah.
It could be just inspiring books.
I think that I actually haven't personally read any of his books, but I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but Gabor Mate. I've watched a lot of him speaking, just on YouTube and stuff like that, and I think that the way that he kind of describes addiction and stuff is he puts it very simply and just really kind of sums it up in a kind of a beautiful way, you know what I mean? And I can really what he says resonates with me, I feel like. Yeah. So I definitely, there's a few books that I want to read that he has written and that have been recommended to me.
Yeah, I have a few of them. So The Realm of Hungry Ghosts,
That's
When the Body
top of
Says
my
No,
list.
and Scattered Minds is the one about ADHD.
Yeah.
And my cat is named Jaja Gabor after Gabor Mate. So, and a friend of mine actually in Victoria, he lived in Vancouver, and Dr. Mate was his, he delivered him in the hospital.
Oh, what?
In Vancouver, Vancouver Children's or something. I know, it's all full circle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does provide things in a way, in a description of things that are tangible for people to understand.
Tangible, that's a perfect word, yeah. 'Cause it's like, it's just easy to listen to, and I feel like it's easy to, I don't know, to kind of connect with for someone that even if they don't have lived experience or they don't necessarily have that automatic compassion for addiction.
Yeah.
I think that it's, tangible, the way that he speaks about it, so.
Have you heard about one of the studies that he did called Rat Park?
I don't know, I don't think so.
Okay, you'd love it. It's in one of the books, and it's about an experiment that they did with rats, and they had two separate environments. One of which had just a water bottle that had water in it, and another water bottle that had cocaine-laced water. And that rat was isolated on his own, right? And then there was Rat Park, which was, there was things to do, there's friends, there's more than one rat in there. They put a background of being like outdoors stuff, and like there was wheels, and they had the same, a bottle with water and a bottle with cocaine-laced water. And in the one where the rat was isolated, he chose to drink the cocaine water almost every time. And in the Rat Park, where there was this community environment and there was things to keep him, things to do, things to be happy about, even the trees in the background or whatever.
Yeah.
Those ones, I only use the cocaine water recreationally. So I think like that has a lot to say with the importance of the connection with community and needing supports and needing activities and good programming. And yeah, that's one of my favorite examples.
Yeah, I actually, now that you explain it, I have heard about that.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
It is brilliant. And I think like going back to the peer work that you were talking about, like that sense of connection and stuff like that for people doing the peer work as well, like and that sense of purpose too,
Totally, yeah.
I think that that's a really helpful thing when you're going through recovery is feeling like you're needed and like you're providing something and like you have that kind of sense of purpose. And I think that a lot of people that go through addiction feel like they've missed out on this big part of life, which in a lot of ways they have, and they've it's not that they didn't learn anything from their experiences, but they learned different things than someone who would have maybe not gone through that path, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So I think like coming out of addiction, you kind of struggle feeling like you might not have as much to offer or something like that because you might not have a degree like you may have had if you didn't go through that, or you might not have whatever it is. It just looks different. So finding an outlet where the things that you've learned and your knowledge and your lived experience have a purpose and are serving like not only you but other people, like I think that's a really powerful thing as well, right?
Yeah, like searching for meaning is a thing that a lot of people have shared with me, like that they, you need to have something that you care about that gives you meaning and purpose in your life, and having like your creative outlet, like with painting, it was such a good way for me to to keep myself busy, but also just express myself in ways. And like I didn't refer to myself as an artist until the teacher at the TRU did. It was just a weird realm for me, but once you get that, and then it's a totally different world.
Yeah.
But we need to have these different supports for people who have the ability to try things, because unless you come from families where you have financial stability to have options to do different day camps or different classes after school, then you wouldn't even know that someone might be the brilliant sculptor or brilliant woodworker.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, having programs that aren't just like about recovery, but having options of cool things to do is like so valid.
Yeah, and I think that plays into that whole like preventative measures stuff, like like giving people purpose, and it doesn't have to necessarily, like when I talked about preventative measures, I talked a lot about support and awareness around trauma and around like different things that may lead people to addiction, but also preventative measures of giving people tools to like healthy coping mechanisms, like I kind of touched on, but like that purpose, that outlet for them that interest and passion, right? So, yeah.
Like teaching healthy communication.
Yeah.
It would be a great class
Oh my
for people
God.
to have at a younger age. Yeah.
Mandatory class.
Yeah. I completely understand that statement. So what gives you hope, like that we're going to be able to get through this crisis? Like, you give me hope, but like what gives you hope?
I think just people give me hope. I think that people are coming around, I feel like more and more people are talking about it. More and more people are willing to hear a different perspective on it, and they're open to different opinions and different approaches to things. I think that people that have gone through this and come out the other side give me a lot of hope as well, just like as an individual in recovery. Like, that gives me a huge amount of hope, being like, okay, like, you were here and now you're there.
Yeah.
I was there, I can be there too, right? So I think that society is like slowly moving in the right direction. Being in university is a super awesome environment where I do feel a lot of hope. Being in the education program and then the social work program before that.
And it's been great for me. Like,
Yeah.
I love being a student.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I do too.
I know, I'm like, who knew? Like, yeah, I'm like, I don't want to finish because then I'll have to be into the real world. But yeah, it's been really fantastic. And having these it's a whole new world. And not just about this elitism, right? Of like, being in school is, that's what you need to make it. It's just that you have such so many more connections to different people and ideas and thinkers, people that are talking about issues that matter.
Yeah, and care about issues that matter.
Yeah.
And even the professors, I loved this. Like, I've been taught by like a handful of different professors that have been like, when you go into the workforce, you are going to have to work within these parameters because these systems are set and you have to work within these systems, but they don't work. And you need to, and they just understand that like these systems, a lot of them are failing, and these people do have to work within these systems. But we're being taught as university students that like, if we get a chance to be in a position where we have any control over the systems that people have to work within, it is a position worth taking so that you can make like a difference, not just with the people you're working with, but within the systems that people have to like work within, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, dismantling the systems. I was so stoked the first time I heard a lecture and they're calling out the BS and like the nonsense, and it's like these are the jobs that people care about, or what they call the BS jobs. And then there's ones that because you're never going to get the pay that you deserve, and so we're learning how to navigate and work within the systems to be able to make change. And one of the best classes I ever took was global capitalism, globalization, and revolutions. And it was so fascinating being able to look at the world framed by these professors that I had respect for, and showing about how do we take this on? How do we call out what it is, and how do we rise up against it and see when things are going in a way that we as individuals can make a difference for, because it's very easy to feel jaded. In the class Capitalism, Globalization, and Revolutions, they talk about violence is always the resistance to power, and through that class it made me feel less like useless, because I felt burnt out. I felt like what I was doing for so long wasn't making a difference, and I think that's what contributed a lot to my own struggles, because I had lost that feeling of, my passion didn't have anywhere to go. Yeah. It was stuck, and to me it felt like passion with nowhere to go and feeling like it wasn't changing anything is almost as bad as having no passion. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and it was a big contributor to, I think, why I struggled for a long time, and coming to go to school at TRU and realizing that getting my master's in this program and learning about these different ways that how do we actually tackle on the system from the not from the micro level, but from the macro system to be able to make change. Yeah, totally. And I think also for me, it's frustrating because I want change now. Yeah, totally. I'm so impatient. But humans just don't work like that. And when you're talking about the scale of change that we are talking about,
humans just don't make those big changes like that. They're gradual, right? So like if you look like at the changes generationally, like we talked about how our parents grew up versus how we're growing up versus how the kids that are in elementary school right now are growing up. Like there are gradual changes in a positive direction. And I think that just like reminding myself that as well, that it does take time, and it takes thinking about the people that are in university right now and what they're learning and what they're going to do when they get into the workforce and stuff. It's not a change that can happen now, but it is a change that we are working towards, I think, as like society.
You are such a, just inspiring, unique, cool person. Like, are you unique to your generation, to your age group? Like, is there hope that there's other people like you that are currently at your age?
Oh yeah, totally. I think that was like kind of a really awesome realization for me going to university and seeing so many people my age and of different ages, like a little bit younger than me and
careful,
and
I'm
older
an
than me. And yeah, it was like very eye-opening because I had this like lack of hope for a while in my life where I just felt like people just need to open their eyes and people need to like have more compassion and more empathy, and people need to like, I don't know, figure out the priorities that aren't just like these self-serving priorities, but also just like about the world and about humanity and about all of these different things. And I think that
perspective piece.
Yeah, and I think that more and more I find people that do care, and even if they're not necessarily, going into a career path that relates to it, they have an awareness about it, and they're open to the conversations around it, right?
Yeah, having like this opportunity through this podcast of having this dialogue with people that are in all different like walks of life, like it's not that I wasn't aware before, but just when you take the time to sit down and speak with people and really hear them, I think the world is just such a more interesting, bright, intriguing, unpredictable, thing. Whether if you just walk within the same line of that you do yourself, I don't think that you're not going to be surprised by much, right? It's taking the time to talk with different perspectives and to sit down with people and actually, listen for meaning and not listen to respond. I think that's something that is too quick to happen when people meet each other.
Yeah.
And actually giving people the time to share their perspective is really important.
Yeah, and I feel like I had a lot of fear around meeting people in my age group after kind of coming out of addiction or being in addiction even, because I felt like they wouldn't be able to relate to me and I wouldn't be able to relate to them.
Okay.
And like I'd be like, I wouldn't be able to kind of relate my life experience to theirs, or it wouldn't be relevant, or I would be judged, or I would be looked at differently, or whatever that is. And I still kind of am like navigating that. But I think like more and more I'm realizing that there is like a lot more kind of acceptance and understanding, and even being sober now.
Thank you for your choice in wording too. Love it.
I think that there's, I'm like experiencing a lot of support from people my age that, aren't necessarily sober at this time or whatever, they're wherever they're at in life, and I'm experiencing like a huge amount of support from people and a huge amount of encouragement, and it just feels really good to not be put down, or for the work that I've put in not to be like minimized,
Yeah, completely. Yeah. You deserve that credit for the work that you've done.
Yeah.
And every day counts. And every minute. Like I think it's also valid, and not just to have a certain structure or form of way that you frame it to take the validity away from the effort that you've done.
Yeah.
I have a question for you about when people engage in, let's say, like stigmatizing language. This is a question that my parents have asked me. How do you confront those views, people with those views? How do we change, not necessarily the perspective, but how do we engage with them in a way that's not going to cause harm, but how do we kind of correct some really, actually I gotta say that all over again. So a question that my parents have engaged with me and asked was how do we confront and how do we meet people that have some problematic, conflicting views that could be harmful for people with substance use? Like what would you say to somebody that framed addiction as being you have to be clean, quote unquote clean, and what does that imply to you when someone says something like that versus being sober?
Honestly, when people use like stigmatizing language, I just think that it's a lack of knowledge and a lack of kind of education around the topic, and I just take it as an opportunity to be able to like give a piece of information to them, you know? So I think a lot of the time people don't necessarily even mean to be discriminatory and like negative towards it. They just...
No one's corrected them yet or told them some other options, maybe not even correction, that's probably the wrong word, just educating.
Yeah, and so I think giving them perspective on the impact, for one, that their words have, and you know, giving them, like you said, options of other things and other ways you can address those things.
Totally. I feel like it's like there's like steps. Like, okay, so you know, hey, you can, instead of saying this, you know, you could say this. Like saying clean implies that you were dirty at one point in time. Have you thought about it that way? Like, and then, you know, second time, then it'll be like, okay, well, that's just reminders, you know? Like the third time it might be a little bit sassier. I don't know if that's because I'm just losing my patience in my late 30s. But yeah, it's, I think it's not so much as being really combative to people and just really, just try and educate because maybe they didn't, you know, right? It's give people the benefit of the doubt.
Totally, and I think that also, like, I get this, like, total ball of anger inside me sometimes too when people, you know, if you're driving with someone and they say some offhand comment about someone on the street, oh my gosh, it makes me so angry. But like you said, the word combative, like it's not necessarily the best approach to be like, that's not how you should be talking about these people and blah, blah, blah.
Because you want people to feel shame themselves. Like that's the opposite goal of what we, you know, of anti-stigma.
And it's hard to actually hear what someone's saying when you feel like you're being attacked because all you want to do is defend yourself at that point, right? So it's like, if you can come at it with an approach of just like trying to like gently educate that person about like maybe the impact of what they're saying, or maybe educating them about like, you know, the potential experience that those people are having that they might not have even like thought about, right? So
totally, putting things into a perspective and framing them, and you are so brilliant with your wording and your ability to portray things and describe them in ways that other people might not think about, I think is like, why one of the many, many reasons that I wanted you to come on to the show. So as we wrap up here, do you have any last thoughts that you want to share with people at home?
Just to educate yourselves about trauma, about addiction, about how to kind of navigate life with a trauma-informed background. I think having compassion and empathy for people in general, no matter where they're at in life, kind of, you know, perpetuating that like sense of acceptance. I think that is like the best thing anyone can do. I think that I was thinking about the question you asked earlier about what's been the most helpful thing in my recovery, and I think that honestly it's the people that love me, the people around me, educating themselves about recovery and about addiction and about what that does to your brain and about all of these different things that without an understanding of, you're just looking at the person that's in addiction and you're like, what is going on, you know? Like it's hard to support someone and to understand what they're going through if you don't understand what they're going through, right?
Completely. And it takes a bit of the pressure off of it all, this view of being like, it's all you need to do all the changing. When people are helping to, you know, make changes and learn and educate with you, I think to me that's so meaningful. And that is so, I think that's so great. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm just so appreciative and so grateful that you took the time to come down and chat with me today and share your insight and perspective. And do you have anything else you want to say before we end?
I don't know, just keep an open mind and have these conversations as much as you can. I think that's kind of the best thing anyone can do. So thank you for having me.
Of course, I think you're just wonderful.
Thank you.
We'll provide a list of resources mentioned in this podcast episode, as well as Kamloops service providers that Olympia touched on. This is Olympia's story map that she created for my research project on story mapping of people's experiences within the toxic drug crisis. Thank you all for watching the Loop Scoops episode today. And thank you, Olympia, again for coming.
Thank you for having me.